Welcome into Locked On Knicks. We have rumors, not about the Knicks, but that we're going to rudely make about the Knicks, Gavin, on today's show, as well as a couple great player previews.
There are two Lakers unprotected first-round picks up for grabs. Could the Knicks be the team that goes and gets them? And then we're talking two of our favorites, Jericho Sims, Deuce McBride. What do we expect from them this season? We'll tell you right now on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome into Locked On Knicks. We wanted to thank you guys for making Locked On Knicks your first listen today and every day, whether you're checking us out on your favorite podcasting platform or taking in the sights and sounds on YouTube. We appreciate you making us a part of your daily routine. I'm Alex Wolf. I'm editor-in-chief of Knicks site The Strickland, which you can find at thestrick.land. And he is Gavin Shaw, your favorite play-by-play broadcaster's favorite play-by-play broadcaster, working hard on the high school football scene right now. And today we have rumors, Gavin. Rumors abound from The Athletic. What are we looking at right now?
All right, so it seems readily apparent that the New York Knicks, or not the New York Knicks, the Los Angeles Lakers want to trade Russell Westbrook. Shocker. It said, while Westbrook wasn't traded this summer like so many players across the league expected, league sources tell The Athletic that the prospect of him being traded in the coming weeks and months remains real. So who is the favorite right now? That would be the Indiana Pacers, Vice President of Basketball Operations, General Manager Rob Pelinka, owner Jeannie Buss, and Senior Basketball Advisor Kurt Rambis, LOL, seriously considered sending Westbrook and unprotected first-round picks in 2027 and 2029 to the Pacers for center Miles Turner and guard Buddy Hield, sources said. Rambis did talk to Pacers GM about potentially throwing in some booty picks instead, but was denied. You just got to keep scrolling for that part. But Alex, could the Knicks potentially insert themselves into these conversations with maybe even a juicier offer than what the Pacers are trying to send the Lakers' way?
Well, I mean, they have three really good veteran players that, I mean, we've readily acknowledged for at least two of them, like it's kind of just wrong place, wrong time being on the Knicks right now, as far as Derrick Rose and Evan Fournier are concerned, where it's like, yes, they're talented. And like, I really think Evan Fournier is worth his contract. Like, I mean, you don't set a franchise's 3-point record in your first season there unless you are a very legitimate shooter. And like, he's definitely that, as well as having some creation chops. Defensively, not the greatest, obviously, but really does his job on the offensive end. Derrick Rose, coming into camp really light, doing every interview shirtless, doing every workout shirtless, apparently, thanks to losing weight this offseason because he feels nice and trim and healthy and everything else. And, that seems pretty good to me as far as him potentially coming in this year and being able to contribute positively more like he did in 2021. And then, of course, you have Julius Randle that the Knicks have to offer as well, that just made All-NBA 2 seasons ago. And last season, obviously, was not very happy with the shift in philosophy towards the end of the year, the shift in touch allotment and that sort of thing. But on a team, we've talked about this before, on a team with LeBron James and Anthony Davis, I think that he's already done it with Anthony Davis once before at a slightly different point in his career, but I think he would pretty comfortably slot into a third man role behind those guys and, take a sort of more of a backseat with less issues with it should he get traded to the Lakers. Now, the magical thing is, because Russell Westbrook makes so freaking much money, with just a little bit of financial assistance, you can actually make that deal happen. So, Gavin, I'm going to flash it for those watching on YouTube. I'm going to flash this on the screen, but I'll still read it out for anybody just listening in pod form. The Knicks could potentially receive Russell Westbrook and Kendrick Nunn, who picked up his $5.2 million option for this year, as well as Westbrook picking up his $47 million option. That gives you roughly a total of $52 million in incoming salary for the Knicks. The Knicks could then send out Julius Randle, Evan Fournier, and Derrick Rose, who are making roughly that much combined between the three of them. Crazy to say that Russell Westbrook makes almost as much as 3 starting caliber NBA players in one, when he himself is probably not startable at this point in his career. But that's where we're at. So they can get those 3 players. And then we were talking about this before the show. I mean, if for Hield and Turner, the 2 first-round picks were apparently on the table, 2027 and 2029, if I'm the Knicks, I would be like, hey, we'll take even less than that. We'll take the 2027 first, and maybe they own Chicago's second-round pick this year in a deep draft. So say, you know what, we'll take a little bit more ammo for the 2023 draft or for a potential trade around the deadline or something if they want to still pursue a star. Go for something like that. Instead of the 2 first-round picks, make things more palatable for the Lakers from a pick perspective, while also taking 2 bad contracts off their hands that the Knicks would probably just buy out. Hopefully, would just buy out. You don't want to actually play Westbrook and Nunn at all, because the whole point is kind of clearing that log jam that they have going right now. But Gavin, that deal, what are your thoughts on that? What do you think about potentially, the Knicks inserting themselves in those trade conversations and then, walking away with a couple extra picks and, more importantly, a less bloated roster that then clears the way for all these young guys that we're so desperate to see play?
Look, it's weird to say as a Knicks fan, but we're kind of saving the Lakers from themselves, right? Because to me, setting out 2 unprotected picks in that kind of deal is to some extent the height of insanity. That doesn't make them a finals contender. That trade makes them a playoff team, which I don't know if they are right now. They're so far behind the heavy hitters in the West, and the roster mismanagement ever since they won the championship has been so gross and negligent that they are very far removed. But you know what? If they have delusions of grandeur, why shouldn't the New York Knicks benefit from it? And to your point, I mean, we've seen readily how valuable unprotected first-round picks are in the NBA. I mean, heck, the Knicks were, or at least were very reticent to give up 3 of them to go get Donovan Mitchell. And you just go kind of player for player. You can certainly make a case that package from the Knicks gives the Lakers a higher ceiling. Obviously, Julius Randle is just far and away the most accomplished player on that list from either team. I would personally take Evan Fournier over Buddy Hield, just because as bad as Fournier is defensively, Hield is even more of a disaster. And Fournier gives you a little bit more off the dribble. And in terms of creation, Hield for his career, I think a slightly better 3-point shooter. Fournier last year was a far better 3-point shooter. Hield was only 36% last year. And then you give the Lakers Derrick Rose, who LeBron, I believe in the past, has been a big fan of. And if he, again, is anything close to what he was 2 years ago, he pretty quickly, I mean, unless you want to call Braun the point guard on that team, he becomes the best point guard on that roster, and a guy who can create easy shots for LeBron and AD, which right now they can essentially only do for each other. The appeal of Turner is that he's, as we've talked about many a time on this podcast, relatively unique in the NBA in that he can shoot threes at a high rate from the center position and protect the rim on the other end of the floor. And look, if you have Anthony Davis, that's arguably the most valuable commodity you can have. But if Davis is willing to play center and Randle can give you a decent facsimile of that and play fast and give you some ISO scoring, which neither of those 2 guys do, there's certainly a world where the Knicks offer gives you a higher ceiling. And again, as the fake Knicks GM in this conversation, I would only want 1 unprotected first-round pick. They can keep the second, redirect it somewhere else for an additional asset. And once you take that into account, it's hard to comprehend that it's not a better offer for the Knicks. But Alex, can you see the Knicks actually wanting to do something like this? And at least in their minds, taking a clear step back in terms of winning games this season and doing so?
I mean, it all comes back to, are they going to let Tibbs, who's probably 1 foot out the door, influence what they're doing? Or are they going to do what they think is best for the team going forward? I think the front office has shown via moves like the Cam Reddish trade last year that they're going to kind of operate of their own accord, whether or not Tibbs approves or not. I don't think it's unreasonable to assume too that Tibbs is probably, again, 1 foot out the door. And even if this causes a situation where Tibbs kind of says like, well, if you make that trade and get rid of, Rose and Randle and whatever, and you're not clearly trying to win, I don't want to be here anymore. In which case, if you're the Knicks, you could be like, okay, we'll promote Johnny Bryan. I'm sure he'd be happy to have the job, and just kind of go about things in that way, because Tibbs probably still would be like, I still want to win. And the Knicks would be like, well, too bad. I think they would potentially do it. I also think the Lakers would potentially do it. I mean, if the team was willing to trade for Russell Westbrook and think that he was a positive contributor last year, after clearly showing that he was beyond that at this point in his career, in his other stops prior to that, I mean, they have to be looking at Julius Randle and say, well, damn, this was a guy that was in the All-Star game 2 years ago that was, that was an All-NBA player 2 years ago. Derrick Rose, who's a multi-time, former All-Star, former MVP, everything else like that. Evan Fournier, who's been in the discussion for being like an All-Star type player. This package, if the Knicks are willing to offer it, screams the type of package that the Lakers would be into, because it's just the type of players that they gravitate towards at this stage, with LeBron as their like almost like acting player GM. But I also don't think that this would be like some weird pipe dream trade for the Lakers either. I think that it would actually, I mean, if everything fell into place with this, it kind of gives you exactly what you want with LeBron. Like Fournier and Rose in particular are both really good spot up shooters. Like Rose actually really is a great spot up 3-point shooter, as we saw 2 years ago at this point in his career. That's great to have with LeBron, as well as having two guys in those two that can put the ball on the floor a little more, which is definitely more than you could say for Buddy Hield or Miles Turner. And then Julius, obviously, like we said, has the ability to ISO and break a defense down. And, for better or worse, sometimes if he's trying to be the number one option, but if he's your third option and is getting, third option defensive attention behind LeBron and AD, I think that would create a good opportunity for him to find his own looks. And then he's also adept enough to find a LeBron or AD if things go south and he gets double teamed or something. And those are two pretty easy bailout options to give the ball and say, okay, go score. So I think it could potentially work out pretty good for the Lakers if they would decide to go with this. So I don't know if the Knicks are going to insert themselves in this conversation, but I think it should be remembered that just like a week or two ago, we had Ian Begley of SNY, who's generally pretty plugged in with the Knicks, saying that he thought there was like a 40% chance that Randle gets traded before the start of the season. Maybe the Knicks, seeing this report come out, maybe it's strategic by the Lakers to be like, let's get this out there so we can get some offers coming in. Maybe the Knicks pick up the phone tomorrow and say, hey, we got some players you might be interested in, and we'll take slightly less than what the Pacers want. How's that sound? And we'll clear Kendrick Nunn off your books too, just for good measure. Like, maybe it'd be something that the Lakers would be into.
The only downside is Tibbs would definitely start Russell Westbrook and play him 40 minutes per game. So maybe
that's why you got to take that option right off the table.
Yeah.
Cut him immediately. Don't let, as soon as the plane touches down, give him his pink slip and get him out of there. Like
Tibbs pulls up in a car. He's like, get in. We don't have much time.
It's like turns into an action movie then, like a hostage situation.
If Leon doesn't find you for 24 hours, you're on the team for the rest of the year.
Tibbs picks him up in a white Bronco and they go on a slow speed chase through Manhattan. Oh man,
we can hide out at the Westchester facility. No one wants to go there.
None of the other players will be caught. Be caught dead there. They hate it there.
Yeah, you'd ultimately have to do is maybe feed Emmanuel quickly some Built Bars so he starts looking a little bit more like Russell Westbrook and just confuses Tibbs.
That's really a good point. And today's episode is brought to you by Built Bar. And if you haven't tried Built Bar Puffs yet, you're really depriving yourself of one of life's greatest joys. And guess what? There is a new flavor ready. Delicious, indulgent cookie dough. It's covered in chocolate. That's right. Built has done it again. Let me introduce you to your new favorite cookie dough chunk puffs. Have a light and chewy texture. Real cookie dough chunks. And of course, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. All the joys of eating cookie dough without the hassle of making it. Plus, it's good for you because cookie dough chunk puffs are only 160 calories, and they have a whopping 15 grams of protein in them. So run to Built.com to snag a box for you and the family. It will be the perfect treat, or you can find a really good hiding place and just hoard them for yourself. What's great about Built, too, is that all their bars are made with collagen protein, which your body absorbs more efficiently and provides tons of great benefits. Eat something that tastes good and is good for you. So go to Built.com and use promo code LOCKEDON15, and you can get 15% off your order. Again, head to Built.com, use promo code LOCKEDON15 for 15% off your order. All right, and we're back, and we want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Knicks your first listen every day. Make sure you check out the Ultimate Pro Basketball Preview starting October 10th, a 6-episode extravaganza to get you ready for the NBA season. The local team experts and the NBA insiders of the Locked On Podcast Network and Odyssey all combining into one ultimate NBA preview. We'll, of course, be part of that. We're part of, I think it's called Big Names, Bigger Questions or something like that. So starting October 10th, search for the Ultimate Pro Basketball Preview 2022 on your Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Gavin, we are back and talking about player previews now. And two guys, second-year players, got varying amounts of exposure last year, but I think we'll first start with Jericho Sims, who, obviously managed to find a bit of a role for himself down the stretch of last season, was a two-way player, but now has found himself with a real deal full NBA contract. So that's great for Jericho. I genuinely really like that the Knicks, kind of showed that commitment to him. Last year ended with a final line of 2.2 points, 4.1 rebounds in 13.5 minutes per game, played in 41 games, had 5 starts, and shot 72.2% from the field, granted on only 1.3 field goal attempts per game. Gavin, the stats are only worth so much with a guy that played so little. A lot of it just kind of has to be with what we were able to see and scout from him. So what are some of the things that you're looking for Jericho to improve upon this year? Although I think it should be noted, it's probably equally likely that we're not going to see a ton of him, at least early in the season, considering the Knicks have a re-signed Mitchell Robinson, a newly signed Isaiah Hartenstein, and then that comfortably slots Sims in as the third true center on the roster with only 48 minutes to go around.
Yeah, I think the one up shot for Sims, which sucks for us, and he wouldn't wish this, but Mitchell Robinson almost guaranteed to miss at least 20 games every year, at least the last couple of seasons. So given that and the fact that Tom Thibodeau will die in that white Bronco before he plays Obi Toppin at center, we should be getting at least that many games of Jericho Sims playing 20 minutes a night. And the good news is I think he can hold up to that. And honestly, what I like, maybe my single favorite thing that Tibbs did last year was when Sims was out there, and when the next guy we're going to talk about, Deuce McBride, was out there, is he ramped up the aggressiveness in his pick and roll coverage. And he went from having Mitchell Robinson play pretty much exclusively drop coverage to having Sims come up to the level and help harass ball handlers. And Sims was really, really good at that. He has quick feet defensively. I know we always reference that Nets game with him where he also showed off at the rim, really impressive verticality. And he's certainly not Mitchell Robinson defensively yet, especially Mitch with his added weight in terms of his ability to affect shots around the basket. And you saw at times in Summer League, people would drive on him on switches who were way smaller. And despite Sims having those monster Avenger-esque arms, he would kind of get like pushed out of the way around the basket. And he has to find his mean streak a little bit around the rim, because we also saw times in Summer League offensively where Quentin Grimes would give him like a perfect dump off pass, and also in the regular season where he would get an offensive rebound and his first instinct would be like, oh, is there someone open behind the 3-point line? And for a guy who essentially never got assists in college, I kind of like that he has that instinct. And we saw in Summer League he threw some really nice passes, but he's gonna have to become like a little bit meaner around the rim. Like I want some coach, like I wish Kenny Payne was here, because I'm sure he would be doing this. I need one of the coaches to be screaming in his ear every time you're out there, you got to find a way to get 2 or 3 dunks. He has to be trying to jam everything down people's throats. But offensively, he gives you a lot of the same stuff that Mitchell Robinson does in terms of being just an out of this world leaper. But he's a little bit more of an off the dribble threat, and not that he's great in that capacity, but we saw him in Summer League string together 2, 3, 4 dribbles. We saw him get a rebound every once in a while and bring the ball up the court, which, I mean, Mitch is, I like, except for the 2 times a year, he puts together a crazy sequence of dribble moves that leaves us scratching our heads. Mitch essentially never does. So all that is to say, there are a lot of flashes of really fascinating and intriguing skill from Sims. I just kind of hope that he can channel all of it into a guy who can rim run and just do a little bit more and is comfortable just once or twice a game, creating his own offense, whether that's actually scoring the ball or like driving and drawing a double team and kicking it out.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I think I envision kind of similar things for him. I mean, I think what I'll really be looking for out of him is like, what can he do to differentiate himself? What can he do to find some minutes for himself? And I don't know if there is a single thing that he can do if both Mitch and Hartenstein are healthy, but maybe he can make himself situational, maybe like that switchability. If he can really prove like, look, I am going to be, if you're in a tough situation down the stretch of a game, I could be the best defender that you have on the floor because I can stay in front of anybody. Maybe that inspires Tibbs to play him in some situational minutes. I mean, maybe in a pure defensive scenario, like down the stretch of a game, you could actually get away with playing him and Mitch together just for a split minute there, just to throw them both out there and just say, like, go get a stop, and get a stop, get a rebound, because then you have two guys that are very adept at doing both those things that are on the floor. And you just have to be, it has to be one of those scenarios where it's like, okay, you're out there for defense. As soon as we get that board, we're calling a timeout. And then we're getting an offensively minded lineup out there. And we're not going to like run the floor or something and try to do something with both you out there on offense. Cause that, I think we can both agree, this would not work at all. But maybe it's that, maybe it's, I don't know. I think that would probably be the most likely scenario where I could see him getting some minutes or even seconds, as it were, this season. But I think if he just keeps showing improvement, I mean, he's one of those weird prospects that makes me, we talked about this when we talked with Ricardo Greer from Dayton about Obi Toppin, who will of course be previewing later on too. But it's one of those deals where he makes me reevaluate evaluation sort of, in the sense that I look at Sims and I'm like, you're so much older than most of your contemporaries, but you play so much younger. And he doesn't have the extenuating circumstances that Obi did either, where he went through community college and seemed like a really late bloomer or whatever. It's just, he just went all the way through college, was still kind of raw.
He did get injured a lot in college. So maybe that's like his version of it.
Maybe that's part of it. But he did seem to pick up on things pretty quickly last year. So I would look just for whenever he does get a shot to get some improvement. I really hope, though, that they still utilize the G League with him, just like the next guy we're going to talk about in Deuce, where like if there's not going to be minutes for him on the big team, which I think even if the Knicks made the trade that we just talked about, where they could somehow clear off Randle, Fournier, and Derrick Rose, like I still don't think there would really be minutes for Sims, because you have two young, like heading into their prime centers in Mitch and Hartenstein already on the roster that do two drastically different things, that should presumably sop up all 48 of the minutes at the 5 spot. So I guess we'll see. I guess the only other way I could potentially see Sims getting minutes is if Tibbs is still in charge and he goes into full East is big man mode and plays Hartenstein and Sims together, because he looks at it and says, well, Hartenstein can shoot and Sims, whatever, willing to move, Hartenstein back a position rather than Obi up a position to get Obi minutes at the 5. Maybe I could see that happening. But if I was a betting man, I would say barring injuries, he's not going to get too much playing time. And hopefully he'll get a lot of time in the G League to keep kind of improving his game. And whenever he does get time, hopefully he can come up and make the most of it.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. Let's take one final break and then come back and talk his contemporary, Deuce McBride. That next on Locked On Knicks. All right, we are back, third and final segment here on Locked On Knicks, and it's Deuces Are Wild, Alex. It's time. One of our favorites, Deuce McBride, who I didn't advertise in the show. I got asked to go on a West Virginia radio station to talk about if Deuce McBride would be in the Donovan Mitchell trade earlier this summer. So that was a cool Deuce McBride related experience. But he had a solid summer league. Somewhere around 16, 4-4, shot 54% from 2, 36% from 3. The big complaint was that we already know he's a fantastic shooter, right? He was elite in the NBA G League, putting up right around like 9 attempts per game, shooting around 38% from distance, doing it off the dribble, doing it off the catch. Like he's a very, very good NBA shooter, even position designation taken into account. The concern is his ability to get all the way to the rim, which is interesting because he is a really good athlete and that shows itself defensively. And it's not even that he has a bad handle, but I remember Prez bringing this up specifically, but in his first summer league, there were sort of like concerns, like how confident is he in his handle? And like, does he know like how to string together multiple moves in a coherent way? Basically, like it's skillful, but is it functional yet? And in college, like he played some off guard too. So I think that's part of it, that he didn't really get those reps, like going up against different coverages night after night after night as the primary guy on the ball. And the G League gave him a year of doing that. And in summer league, for the most part, he didn't look super duper confident attacking the rim until the final game where he got 5 shots in the paint and looked pretty good finishing on them, both with some creative layups and showing off a floater game. But to me, Alex, that's his swing skill, because obviously on some switches, he's going to have some trouble, but by and large, he's going to kill it defensively. He's going to hit shots. He just needs to be someone who gets all the way to the rim to, I think, be a long-term NBA player at his size.
Yeah, I'm with you. And like you brought up Summer League, and I didn't even mention in the last segment, I kind of forgot, but like Sims, I think, really showed some sort of new stuff in Summer League. Like he seemed like he was really working more on like post moves and little things like that you want to see guys work on in Summer League. Grimes came in as a second year guy and was clearly tasked with like being the engine in Summer League. And I feel like we were both looking for something a little new from Deuce there, and mostly just got the Deuce experience, and it was just like, okay, so he just does what we know he can do. And the few times that he did try to get inside, he looked pretty good, but he still wasn't like actively seeking that out. He still just kind of seemed content in his comfort zone, which was pulling up from 3 or pulling up from mid-range. And so I guess that's part of what I hope he works on in Westchester this year. Like it was pretty obvious he was too good for that level of competition last year when he played. I don't have his G League stats in front of me. I know he averaged something like 30 points in like 4 or 5 games in the G League last year, which is just like insane. I'm actually going to pull it up because now I'm curious. Last year, 27 points on 48.8% from the field on 21 field goal attempts per game. And even better than you thought, 42% on 9 attempts per game.
Nice.
Yeah, crazy stuff. And never missed a free throw, but only got to the free throw line 1.8 times a game. So he's shooting the ball 21 times a game and was only getting to the free throw line not even 2 times per game. So not even 1 trip to the free throw line per game. So that, to me, I'm right there with you. I think that's what he has to work on the most. And we talk about it all the time. Like it's not for lack of explosion, I don't think. I mean, he's a former football player as well. It's well documented. Like he used to play quarterback, and you could see he's got like a football player's build. He's got the broad shoulders, and for being a plus wingspan guy like he is, he's actually like built pretty well, I think, pretty muscular and whatever. So I don't know why he's hesitant to start getting inside. Hopefully he takes some notes from like Quickly this year, because we saw Quickly last year who had some of the same issues where instead of going to his, pull-up shot all the time, was going to his floater as like his main weapon because he didn't want to get all the way to the cup. Last year started getting all the way to the cup. And, so if this was like NBA 2K and I was going to pick my veteran, mentor for the guy, I know that Quickly's not that much older than, Deuce is, but I would probably say like, I want to pair up Quickly with Deuce this year because they share so many similar traits in their build and their play style and stuff like that. If you can get McBride doing some of the stuff that Quickly was doing last year, maybe by this time next year, we'd be talking about, complaining about how Deuce isn't getting enough minutes and there's not enough room in the rotation for Deuce to get minutes because of X, Y, and Z. And like the Knicks really need to find a way to get this guy minutes, just like we're talking about, Emmanuel Quickly and Obi Toppin this year. But I think that ability to score on the inside is what is going to ultimately determine that. But otherwise, I think he's got all the tools to be like a great rotation player. He's got the shooting. Some people, some of the beat writers, even the end of last year, were citing like, well, Deuce only shot like 24% on threes. It's like, yeah, on a sample size of what? Like, how many minutes did he get? Like, you can't hold what he shot in the NBA last year against him. You can look at other samples to get an idea of what he really is like as a shooter, where he's generally been pretty good, like 37, 38%. If he could shoot the 3, if he could figure out a way to start getting inside, he has that pull-up midi also that he can go to. We already know that he's going to impact the game in a really positive way on the defensive end. So what more do you really need out of like at worst a bench guard there? So I'm totally excited to see what he does. I hope, like I said, that we see a little more experimentation with his game in whatever time he gets in preseason and stuff like that versus what we saw in Summer League. And I hope that he continues to develop those skills in Westchester this year, where I would assume he'll probably still get a decent amount of playing time along with Sims, just like last year.
Yeah, and it's the hardest thing for a young guy to do, playing for a coach like Tibbs, who will yank you with a moment's notice, but I just want to see him put it up. Like whenever he gets in, even if it's 5 times this year for 15 minutes and all his times, like get up 5 threes, even if he pulls you in 2 minutes. Like he just needs to fire with confidence, because to your point, we know what kind of shooter he is. And I think that is, again, like for him to really establish himself, like if that's going to be a signature skill, he has to lean all the way into it, and he can't be shy about putting up shots no matter who's on the court. And to your point on the small sample size theater, like the Knicks were insanely positive every time he was on the court. It was something like plus 20 per 100 possessions in most of his lineups. Like they were so good. So I just think it's good vibes when he's out there. Like his ability to just press the ball. I mean, it's sort of, we always make this comp, but it's sort of what was really appealing about Pat Beverley when he first got into the NBA. And like, especially like, I don't think it's not sustainable if you're playing 30 minutes a game, but if he's coming in for 10 minutes, like he can go and be a bulldog and ruin like Darius Garland's night, or whoever, like insert name of star point guard here. And I think that fires up everyone else on this team. So I'm excited to see him get some minutes this year.
Yeah, I am too. I certainly hope he gets them. I will just say too, while we're on the topic of the small sample sizes and the great ratings and stuff they had, I'm fairly certain that he and Quickly had the best 2-man net rating in the entire NBA last year. And granted, again, it was in a pretty small sample, but they were like plus 35 in whatever minutes they had together per 100 possessions. So maybe something else worth experimenting with a little bit. Maybe to bring this all full circle, maybe that trade happens where you get rid of, Fournier, Rose, and Randle all in one fell swoop to the Lakers, and you can play Quickly and Deuce as your 1-2 off the bench and see what happens as far as, them really influencing the game defensively, and both having shooting, both having that pull-up ability, both having the creation ability for themselves and others, and blah, blah, blah. Maybe you catch some magic. Who knows? As your new, your redux version of Rose and Quickly from a couple years ago, but with the roles reversed, where then Quickly becomes the mentor, and McBride is the new mentee, like a like a Sith ascension.
Yeah.
Quickly murders his master and picks a new apprentice.
Yeah, and Deuce is the Jar Jar Binks, who no one knew was a Sith, but they find out.
Yes, Darth Jar Jar, the best story that never happened in Star Wars. But we've reached the point of getting into deep cut Star Wars nerd talk on the pod, so I think this is our cue to go. But Gavin, tonight is the first preseason game of the season, so the season kicks off in earnest starting today. So tomorrow we will have our very first game recap of the season for everybody to look forward to. So we hope
let me sorry to interrupt you, Alex, but let me just note real quickly, because we got up kind of late today, but we did put out a podcast like on things we want to watch in that first preseason game. So if you missed that yesterday, you can go check it out right now.
That's a good idea. So check that out. But till next time, till tomorrow, when we come back with that first game recap, thank you all for listening, and we will talk to you guys all soon. Peace out.